Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Conversational commerce is one of the most powerful trends shaping retail marketing media today, according to Michael Ricci, industry expert and vice president of new technologies at Cinch. In this episode, Michael breaks down the past, present, and future of SMS and how the modern era of customer acquisition lies in trust building and the potential of chatbots. Together, we discuss the impact of personalized, accessible, and streamlined conversations on the consumer buying process. Michael offers key examples of big brands that are pack leaders in utilizing chatbots, addresses common misconceptions about SMS and chatbot technology, and talks about cutting-edge mobile strategies.
Consumers are tuning out of email. They're not opening it any longer. So SMS became a new channel that brands were anxious to begin to communicate with consumers, maybe pass them offers, maybe send them those appointment reminders, maybe tell them their prescription was ready to pick up, if you will. And since that point in time, it's become more and more mainstream and more relied upon.
Yeah, let's listen in now. Michael, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing good, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining me. You and I had the chance to briefly catch up off mic, get to know each other, but all it did for me is kind of whet my appetite for the conversation, because a lot of what you guys are doing, I wish I would have had as when I was in a marketer, because it's so powerful, I think, and it's pretty cool. So I want to learn all about it. But let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are.
You bet. So Michael, I'm Michael Ricci. I'm Vice President of Business Development, and I oversee our partnership and channel programs in North America. I've been with Cinch about almost 2 years now. I came out of the world of Oracle, where I was their mobile subject matter expert and also helped them take to market their new CDP called CX Unity. Prior to that, I was with a Salesforce partner called Digital Fusion, where I was chief digital officer and ran all of our client-facing engagements. And then prior to that, was embedded with players like Merkle and Web Trends and a host of other technology providers. So long track record in the world of technology. And during the course of that time, I've worked with some of the biggest brands on the planet, help them solidify their mobile strategies. And that's what I tend to focus on here at Cinch.
You've been at this intersection of technology and the marketing world for pretty much your whole career, by the sounds of it, just by that pedigree of those organizations that you work for. Yeah, I mean, you must have seen a lot of change from massive, many-month projects to integrate some pretty, what is now fairly simplistic marketing to where we're at today, yeah?
For sure, Michael. Yeah, actually, just to date myself, I go back to what we consider the dinosaur phase in mobile messaging, back when the only option for a brand, there were no smartphones. We really didn't have the mobile web, so the only option you had if you were a brand was to use SMS. And back in those days, I was helping eBay help evolve their auction strategy so that text messages would show up letting me know that an auction was about to close and trying to reinforce traffic to that particular auction. So I've been around since the early days of mobility, if you will, and I've seen the explosion of smartphones, the advent of the mobile web, app mania as it's become known, and now the latest trend, which is conversational messaging. And it's super exciting. All of them have brought new capabilities.
Yeah, I want to get to conversational messaging, conversational commerce, I think, is, as you guys call it. Now, where are you based? I forgot to ask you. Where am I talking to you today?
I'm based in Denver. I actually live in a small mountain town called Evergreen, just outside Denver, up in the foothills of the Rockies.
Very nice, very nice. And do you guys operate North American, global? What's your scope for Cinch?
We're a global player based in Stockholm, Sweden, but North American headquarters in Atlanta, Canadian headquarters in Toronto, but doing business around the world in virtually every country and growing at the speed of sound.
And give me a bit more background about the company, number of employees. I mean, you operate clearly globally. Is it fast growing? What's the origin story behind it? How did it come to be?
Yeah, so Cinch started out as basically just a mobile messaging company in Stockholm. And back in the early days of SMS, they played a necessary role, which is carriers don't want to deal with enterprise brands. They depend on what's known as aggregators to aggregate messaging traffic on behalf of the brands and then transit it via those pipelines. So early on, Cinch was known as CLX, was one of the key players in the messaging aggregation space, but it's exploded and we've become literally one of the key players in what's known as the communications platform as a service space, or what we call it is CPaaS. In that CPaaS world, we compete with a variety of players, including the likes of Twilio, but we are the fastest growing player in the space. We're regarded as a market leader by IDC, Gartner, Forrester, and others. We're recognized as about a $1.2 billion player, but when you consider our latest acquisitions, we're more like a $3 billion player worldwide. So super fast growing and made our way into the Wall Street Journal last week too.
Great pedigree, great background. And what I love about, as I'm listening to you and reflecting on that, is this global experience that's brought local, right? Which is so powerful, where you can help our retailers, all the listeners, based on both what can be done here in Canada and the US and then around the world. We've touched on it here and there just as part of our introduction, but give us a short history of time, so to speak, in the development of SMS and text messaging, because it's come a long way. And then we'll get to the future. Oh, actually, you guys are doing the future now, I think, in some ways. But give us a sense of how it's developed and the ecosystem around it, just so we understand, like, where do the platforms play, your Facebooks and all those kind of platforms. So just make sure everybody's on a level playing field and understanding what we're talking about here.
You bet. Yeah. So SMS, as it's known, or short haul message service, that's what SMS stands for, has been around since literally the late 90s. And it was introduced as a solution that would enable consumers to message each other. But as it's evolved over time, it's become a staple of our daily lives. And by that, I mean, if you think about it, via SMS, we get alerts from our airlines that our flight is late. We get alerts from Uber letting us know that our driver is approaching and will be there in 30 seconds, if you will. We get notifications from our hairdresser and our barber and our dentist that we have appointments that we shouldn't forget. So it's become literally a staple of daily life, and by far and away is sort of the preferred way that most consumers have chosen to communicate, both peer-to-peer as well as with brands that they trust. Back in the early 2000s zone, enterprise brands started switching on to SMS as a better way to communicate with consumers. And part of that was driven by the fact that consumer appetite for email is waning. Most consumers regard it as a spam channel. Gmail is certainly treating it that way now. And so consumers are tuning out of email. They're not opening it any longer. So SMS became a new channel that brands were anxious to begin to communicate with consumers, maybe pass them offers, maybe send them those appointment reminders, maybe tell them their prescription was ready to pick up, if you will. And since that point in time, it's become more and more mainstream and more relied upon by business and enterprise. We get fraud alerts from our bank that let us know that we might have been the victim of a fraud or that we have an overdraft or what have you. Literally, they become a staple by which business now communicates with its consumers.
You know what? 15 years ago, I wouldn't have called this. I thought that people would find it just too intrusive and too overwhelming. But you're right; it's very useful. Like, it's just, I can't imagine. As you described, everything from dentist appointments to deliveries on the doorstep to whatever. It's just become a very powerful mechanism. And again, you're right about email. Email is still pretty powerful, but it's hard to break through the clutter, and it's not as immediate, right? I mean, the email could languish there for days, whereas my SMS, when I get a text, I'm looking at it in seconds. It's funny, right? Because it's a bit of a human behavior thing. It was kind of, it took me a little bit by surprise, and as I was reading through your documentation, it's really interesting where the future is going. So let's talk about that continued this continued evolution. So it's kind of moved from a customer service vehicle, and as you think of it, chatbots that are powered by technology. Let's talk about the tech a little bit as chatbots have evolved. From the rudimentary, not a lot of math or science behind it kind of alerts to getting a little more sophisticated. Is this the rise of AI and machine learning that's really going to be helping and help the rest of our conversation along in terms of what you guys are working on?
It is, Michael. It's sort of an interesting phenomenon, but let me ground our discussion a little bit, which is we call this conversational messaging. And we did some research a couple of years ago. What we were anxious to understand is what are consumers looking for out of their messaging experience? And what they told us in no uncertain terms was a few things. One, they wanted it to be rich and app-like. They wanted pictures and videos and what have you as a part of messaging. And when you think about that, today a lot of enlightened retail brands are using what we call MMS in North America, which is picture and video messaging, to drive better engagement with consumers. And honestly, they are. Consumers really relish those pictures, those videos, and what have you. They tend to click on them and what have you more often. So they're looking for those kinds of experiences. The other thing that they told us is they expect their experience with the brand to be personal. If you think about it, SMS by its very nature is permission-based. I have to opt in to receive messages from a brand. A brand can't go out and buy a list and start targeting me. That's illegal. We have statutes that govern text messaging worldwide, and brands that try that end up subject to huge lawsuits and fines. So this is a permission-based medium. Once I've got the consumer's permission, I need to, let's say, not violate that trust by over-communicating or spamming them with things that aren't welcome. Consumers also told us that they want a two-way dialogue. They don't want to be blasted with messages. They have questions they want to get answered. They need help. They need support and what have you. So they're looking for this dialogue to be two ways. And so all of that has driven us to the advent of what's known as conversational messaging. And conversational messaging takes a variety of forms depending on the market. Here in North America, Canada, and the US, we're predominantly a Facebook Messenger marketplace. That's the preferred platform here. As a secondary platform, WhatsApp, which is owned by Facebook, has become very entrenched in this market. Elsewhere in the world, it can differ. In Japan, for instance, Line is the preferred chat platform. In Russia, it's Telegram, and in certain markets, it's Signal, and in Korea, it's KakaoTalk. So there's different strokes for different folks. They're using different chat platforms. But these chat platforms invariably are two-way. They are meant to converse with a client, and not just by live human being, Michael. In many cases, what you're talking to is what we call a chatbot. And that chatbot is AI-driven. It's capable of, in our instance, conversing in 125 different languages. So I can set up a user flow or user experience in English. But let's say I'm a consumer in French-speaking Quebec and I want to converse with a chatbot and I start speaking French to it. The chatbot instantly recognizes that I prefer to be communicated with in French and then has the same dialogue in that language. So it's become super sophisticated. Where we stand up these experiences, consumers really lean into them. They find them far more compelling. And what you've alluded to is what we're calling conversational commerce. It's one of the most powerful trends that's shaping retail going forward. And in fact, the Shopifys of the world and even Amazon with Alexa to a certain extent are trying to enable conversational commerce, which is assisting the shopping experience, making it frictionless, guiding the shopper, giving them recommendations in real time that literally drive bigger shopping basket sizes and bigger purchases. And so this is one of the most powerful trends, not just in our mind. Again, we're seeing this play out in the world of e-com. Shopify and Square together have designated it their most important trend. It's the one that they're both marching towards. And likewise, we're seeing big enterprise brands begin to switch on to it too. And there's some really cool use cases that I'll be happy to talk about. But we're proving out that it works better.
Well, let's talk about those use cases, so to speak, as you describe them, because I want to envision this as part of this, the customer journey. and another big powerful tool in the marketer's toolkit. So kind of walk us through some of the best in class and what you've seen out there, and give me a sense of, when you say better performance, what does better performance mean, and what kind of numbers have you seen, and your clients have said, wow, this was great, I got this kind of results. Give me a sense of those two things.
You got it. Before I talk about the use cases themselves, I want to allude to some research that was done by Facebook. During last holiday shopping season, Facebook commissioned a study by Boston Consulting Group. Boston Consulting Group went out and polled 50,000 consumers worldwide during the holiday shopping season. And what they discovered was that 2 in 3 consumers that they polled had participated in some form of conversational commerce experience during the holiday shopping experience. They went a step further. They asked the consumers, what did you think? Did you like it? Why did you like it? By far and away, to the tune of 75% in almost every market worldwide, said that they preferred it, and they preferred it because 24/7 they could get questions answered without having to call a call center and sit on hold for an hour or what have you. They liked it because they could get product or pricing information on something that they were intending to buy. They liked it because they could get recommendations from the bots on other things that might accessorize with this, if you will. What Facebook concluded in this study, and it's a study that's widely available online, is that, make no mistake about it, this is the future of commerce. And they're beginning to lean into it. They're leaning into it principally with Facebook Messenger and now WhatsApp and Instagram Messenger. Those are their 3 chat tools that belong to Facebook. Yeah. They're powering up all kinds of great experiences. And to speak to a couple of them, one of them is something that Domino's, the pizza brand, introduced, and they call it PizzaBot. And basically the way that it works is I can go into Facebook Messenger, I can post an emoticon of a slice of pizza. Once that emoticon is posted, it triggers, and this is in their Facebook Messenger page, by the way, it triggers a chatbot experience that welcomes me in the voice of the brand, asks what I'd like to order, and at that point, I can literally tell it I want a whatever size pizza, small, medium, or large. I can tell it what kind of sauce, what the toppings are, or what the specific pizza name is. So literally, I can customize my pizza order. I can give the bot an address, and 30 minutes later, it shows up at my door. It's
interesting that you give me examples like that, because I think about, and I get this question a lot, it's like, what's the difference between just a phone call? And I think you've touched on it a couple of times with the MMS and the visuals and the conversational commerce and the would you like, which could be pretty powerful if you combine all these things together, right? Would you like fries with that, wedge fries with that pizza, and you message with a picture of a delicious fries. That a simplistic example, but are you seeing some of that going on as well? That kind of, well, if you like this, you'll like that. Or listen, I'm looking for a bed for my kid. What have you got that looks like a race car kind of thing? Are you starting to see that kind of really value-added use of the tools?
Yes. In fact, another use case, Michael, that's worth sharing is a big retailer in the UK called H&M rolled out a conversational commerce experience where the bot can assist with shopping. I can tell the bot that I'm shopping for a dress, and it can ask me what color, and then it'll present various dresses. Do I want a floral pattern or what have you? And same thing, it's a very visual experience for the consumer. So the bot is actually assisting their shopping experience and guiding them. And then literally has been programmed to recommend accessories that might go with that particular dress. Here's the kinds of shoes that others have purchased with this, if you will. So it's gotten very, very sophisticated. What's from the consumer standpoint, yes, I could always visit a store, or I could always call. Unfortunately, in the era of COVID, if you've tried to call a retailer, you've sat on hold for quite a while, right? That is not a good consumer experience. Visiting a store, many of us still have apprehensions about shopping. So that's why consumers are leaning into these experiences. Plus, 24/7, it's live. What's not to like about that?
Yeah, right on. Now, when you talk to retail marketers, what what do they get wrong about your service? Like when they say, oh, I thought it did this and my assumption is that, what are the things that you'd want to say, listen, I hear this a lot and it's a myth or it's a misunderstanding. What are you hearing in meetings where you say, well, that used to be the case and it's not the case anymore? Give me a sense of that.
Yeah, good question. I think by and large, there's just misnomers about messaging in general. And one of the misnomers is that it's fraught with spam, and that's because consumers get spammed on their phones. Most of it is illegal practices, if you will, by not mainstream brands, but political campaigns and other folks who are spamming. But by and large, this is a permission-based medium. So too is Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and what have you. I have to agree or become a fan or a follower of that in order to get messaged. People can't just start spamming me in these channels and get away with it. And
our customers, is it your experience that, I guess one of the things would be, hey, what customer is going to sign up for that? But I think more and more are, right? Is that a question you'd get? Like what kind of opt-in rates do you get? Are people finding that?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the first question out of most retail brands' mind is, what do I need to do to fuel acquisition? And how do I put this to work? And how do consumers discover it? And so if you think about mobile becomes a connective tissue for almost every element of the marketer's war chest. So mobile activates outdoor, print, broadcast, and it's being used in all those fashions today. We see various text calls to action, text this keyword to this short code, either to download an app, activate an experience, be transferred to a mobile web shopping experience. All those mobile calls to action are now embedded into what I would call mainstream advertising and communications techniques by retail brands, if you will. So a lot of it is hand-holding, Michael, and that's what we do exceedingly well at Cinch. We help guide our retail and enterprise brands in terms of what's the right strategy and how to think about it and how to marry it into some of their other marketing efforts, how to use it to better activate email and get emails opened, so on and so forth. And so that's one thing that Cinch does that a lot of players in the space don't, is we guide those brands in that evolution of their mobile strategy.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So what retailer these days, many retailers are struggling to find enough people to meet the customer needs. What retailer wouldn't want this kind of powerful technology behind them? But is there a concern that, listen, it's only available, all this sophisticated technology must be pretty expensive or it must take a lot of resources to get going? Do you hear concerns that I need to be a big enterprise client? Like, give me an idea of scope and scale in terms of using the tool. Who can use it? If I'm a mid-size retailer, is this accessible to me, or is it just for the big multinationals?
Yeah, no, great question. So the problem heretofore has been the complexity of integrating with all these channels. If I'm an enterprise brand doing an integration with Facebook Messenger and another with WhatsApp and another with, for the sake argument, Viber, is costly, and then maintaining those integrations is costly, and it's complex too. But what's happened, Cinch for one, and a number of other players have developed what we call modular APIs that take all these channels, merge them together, make them available to enterprise via one convenient API. So it doesn't matter whether it's SMS, MMS, RCS, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, we're able to use that API to communicate with the consumer in mass. And that API is intelligent. It transcodes and optimizes for the channel. It understands the channel capabilities and delivers the message in a channel appropriate way. So we've made it super reachable by retail brands and even principally by small businesses, if you will. So we've taken some of the cost and complexity out of it, and we've made it more of a mainstream technology. And honestly, the only obstacle is really sort of the awareness of a lot of these brands, and they're beginning to really switch on. The work that Facebook did to pave that ground is super important. They showed that it works and consumers prefer it.
Well, and as you said earlier in the interview, you guys are also there to help make sure that the retailers are successful, right? So you've got a technology. What's the business model look like? Is it a SaaS-like service? Is it cost per message? Just give me a broad scope of how the revenue model works, how the business model works.
Yeah, the business model is pretty simple. It's honestly cost per message. Some of these channels that I alluded to are free, meaning that they don't impose messaging charges, and therefore neither does Cinch. Other channels like SMS and MMS, they are channels that there are messaging, if you will. So predominantly it's cost per message, and that's entirely based on volume. With our API, there's a small SaaS charge for the API that's a de minimis monthly fee. But honestly, the fee is three figures, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it isn't costly at all. And more importantly, it takes away all the complexity that I alluded to earlier.
Good word, de minimis. Good word. We like to hear that when it comes to fees. No, this is really good. I mean, and of course, anyone who is using this platform would have permission from the consumer, so they're not sending out millions and millions of purposeless communications and paying millions and millions. They've got opt-in and easy opt-out, right? So it's a high-performing model, right?
That's it. Yeah. I mean, you alluded to this earlier, Michael, but the beauty of all forms of messaging is they're opened almost instantly, unlike email, which either sits in that commercial box that Gmail now has or never gets opened.
Yeah.
The vast majority, and by vast majority, like 98% of all text messages are opened within 30 seconds. We've been programmed almost like laboratory rats to open up that message.
It's funny you say that because I'm just looking at my email on my phone here. I have 213,349 unread emails, but I have no unread texts. So there you go. Proof positive. Well, listen, this has been great. Where can listeners go to learn more? First of all, probably see some case studies and some results and think it through. Maybe other brands who are doing some interesting things. And then how do they get in touch?
Yeah. So first and foremost, welcome to visit the Cinch website. It's SINCH.com. We've got all kinds of great use cases, case studies, and other information there on all forms of messaging. So that's one stop. The other is I have a colleague who oversees our interests in Canada. Her name is Heather Garand, Garand. So it's heather.gerond@cinch.com. You're welcome to reach out to Heather. And also, we set up an email alias for all the people attending RCC. It's rcc@cinch.com. Feel free to ping us on any of those mediums. Yeah. And either myself, Heather, or someone else at Cinch will be happy to follow up and answer any questions that anyone has, Michael.
Yeah, that last point's a great one. Thanks for, and just let the audience know you're supporting Retail Council of Canada and the retail industry here in Canada. You're supporting us by being a big sponsor of our retail marketing conference that we're having and had, depending on when you're listening to this. So thank you for that. And it's a great way to introduce yourself to retail marketers. And thank you for the time we've spent today. I mean, I think it feels like we've done a great service to trying to understand this very powerful technique. We've probably only scratched the surface, so it's great you got lots of other resources and people can reach out and do all those great things. So, Michael, thanks again for being on The Voice of Retail. It's a real pleasure chatting it through with you, and look forward to more successful campaigns, and I wish you guys continued success.
Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate your time as well.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Voice of Retail. Be sure and follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy podcasts, so you don't miss out on the latest episodes, industry news, and insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating review, as it really helps us grow so that we continue to get amazing guests onto the show. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of Emmy LeBlanc Company, Inc., and if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at emmyleblanc.co. Until next time, stay safe, have a great week.